Have you ever wondered why Pharaohs' tombs contain curved stone and wooden supports rather than soft pillows? To modern people, such a bed would seem like a torture device rather than a place to rest. But for the ancient Egyptians, sleep was not just a physiological need, but a dangerous journey into the other world. In this world, evil spirits and demons awaited them, from which they had to defend themselves even in their sleep. Therefore, every detail of their nighttime life, from the material of the bed to the shape of the headrest, had a deep sacred meaning. It was a whole system of rituals and beliefs designed to ensure the safety of the soul in its nighttime wandering. Watch the video to the end to find out why the Egyptians voluntarily gave up pillows and how a special amulet in the form of a headrest was supposed to protect their eternal sleep in the afterlife. What if I told you that everything you believed about sleep was not true for the ancient Egyptians? For us, sleep is rest and recovery, but for the inhabitants of the Nile Valley, it was a time of great danger. They believed that every night their soul, called Ba, left their physical body. It went on a journey through Duat, the afterlife. This world was inhabited not only by gods and ancestral souls, but also by hostile entities. Demons and evil spirits could harm a defenseless soul or even prevent it from returning to the body by morning. Therefore, a sleeping person was considered extremely vulnerable and needed to be protected.
O great Thoth, Lord of divine words, protect my father.
The entire culture of sleep in ancient Egypt was built around this idea. A bed was not just a piece of furniture, but a kind of magical fortress. Every element of its design and decor was intended to protect the sleeper from otherworldly threats. That is why the Egyptians did not strive for maximum comfort as we understand it. It was much more important to surround oneself with the right symbols, amulets, and images of protective deities. The safety of the soul took precedence over the comfort of the body. For example, the legs of beds were often carved in the shape of lion paws. The lion was a symbol of strength and royal power, and it was believed that it would protect the owner's sleep. The bed itself could be decorated with images of the god Bes. Even the position of the body during sleep was important. The Egyptians tried to sleep on their sides, imitating the posture in which, according to their beliefs, the gods slept. This was considered the safest and most correct position for the soul's night journey. Their approach shows how strongly worldview influences the most basic aspects of life. What is commonplace for us was part of a complex cosmological system for them. Sleep was not the end of the day, but the beginning of a new invisible adventure. This concept explains many of the oddities of Egyptian life, which we will examine further. It transforms simple pieces of furniture into powerful artifacts, and it forces us to take a fresh look at the night we are so familiar with. Thus, for the Egyptians, going to bed was not just about resting. It was a conscious step into the world of gods and monsters, and they prepared for this step with the utmost seriousness. We are very interested in hearing your point of view. What do you think about this perception of sleep as a dangerous journey? Write about it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Are you ready to learn the truth about what the most powerful rulers of antiquity slept on? The beds of pharaohs and nobles were true works of art, demonstrating their status and wealth. Archaeological finds, especially from Tutankhamun's tomb, give us a clear idea of this luxurious furniture. Precious woods were used to make these beds. Cedar, ebony, and yew were the most common, and they were imported from abroad. These materials were not only durable, but also beautiful, allowing for the creation of exquisite pieces. The bed had a frame construction with 4 legs. A mesh made of leather straps or plant fibers was stretched over the frame. This mesh served as the base for the mattress. The main difference between elite beds was their decor. They were covered with gold leaf and inlaid with ivory and semi-precious stones. Every centimeter of the surface was decorated with intricate carvings and symbolic images. As already mentioned, the legs of the beds were often made in the form of animal paws. These could be not only lions but also bulls, symbolizing strength and fertility. Such beds seemed to stand guard over their owner's sleep. Some beds had a sloping bedstead. The headboard was slightly raised, which was probably done for convenience. This allowed the sleeper to rest in a semi-sitting position, leaning their head on a special headrest. The folding beds found in Tutankhamun's tomb deserve special attention. These were complex engineering structures consisting of several sections on hinges. Such a bed was ideal for travel and military campaigns. A bed in the home of a noble Egyptian was not just a place to sleep. It was the central element of the bedroom, an indicator of status and power. Its richness and complexity were intended to impress guests and emphasize the high position of the owner. Mattresses for such beds were stuffed with soft materials. These could be wool, goose down, or cotton. All this created a striking contrast to what ordinary people slept on. Luxury and comfort were only available to a small circle of the elite. For most Egyptians, conditions were much more modest. What magical symbols do you think were most often applied to beds for protection? In the next chapter, we will reveal the main secret of the Egyptian bedroom, which still amazes scientists today. I will reveal the most closely guarded secret of Egyptian nights, which will change your idea of comfort. The most unusual and mysterious item in the Egyptian bedroom was the headrest, or uraze. It was not a pillow as we understand it, but a hard support for the head and neck.
This headrest is the sacred bridge, guiding the deceased from the land of the living to the eternal fields of Aru.
They were made from a variety of materials. Ordinary people used wooden or clay headrests, but the nobility and pharaohs could afford items made of stone, such as alabaster or even ivory. The design was simple: a base, a vertical support, and a semicircular bed for the neck. At first glance, sleeping on such a device seems incredibly uncomfortable. However, there were several practical and magical reasons for its use. First, in the hot climate of Egypt, such a stand provided excellent ventilation. The head remained elevated and air circulated freely around it. This helped to make the stifling nights more bearable and avoid overheating. Second, headrests helped to preserve complex hairstyles. Both men and women in ancient Egypt wore wigs and elaborate hairstyles, which it would have been a shame to ruin every night. The urashet allowed hairstyles to remain intact until morning. But the main function of the headrest was magical protection. The head was considered the center of life force and had to be protected especially carefully. The headrest symbolically raised the head above the body, as if bringing it closer to the sky and the gods. Headrests were often inscribed with protective spells and images of deities. Frequent guests were the dwarf god Bez, who scared away evil spirits, and the hippopotamus goddess Tart, the patroness of sleep. These images turned the headrest into a powerful amulet. The crescent shape was also not accidental. It was associated with the horizon, the place where the sun rises and sets. The head of the sleeper, resting on the headrest, was likened to the sun, which was to be reborn in the morning. Interestingly, the headrest was not only an everyday item, but also an important element of funeral equipment. It was placed in the sarcophagus under the mummy's head. It was believed that it would protect the deceased in the afterlife, ensuring his eternal rebirth, like the sun.
Is in peace. May this stone be your protector.
Thus, the stone pillow was a multifunctional device. It served hygienic, everyday, and, most importantly, religious purposes. It was a key element of the system of magical security during sleep. What I am about to show you is very different from the luxury of the pharaohs. Most of the population of ancient Egypt lived in modest mud brick houses. The most common sleeping place was a mat made of reeds or palm leaves. It was spread out directly on the compacted earthen floor. In some houses, you could find special clay platforms. These low elevations along the walls served as beds. They protected sleepers from drafts and insects crawling on the floor. Wooden beds, even the simplest ones, were rare for the poor. Wood in Egypt was an expensive imported material. Therefore, only wealthy craftsmen or officials could afford such furniture. During the hot season, many Egyptians preferred to sleep on the flat roofs of their houses. It was cooler there at night than in stuffy rooms. This was common practice throughout the Middle East. Sleeping on the roof allowed people to catch the night breeze and escape the heat. Families spread out their mats and slept together under the open sky. This also helped to avoid insect bites, which were more prevalent below. Instead of stone headrests, ordinary people used simpler things as pillows. These could be a bundle of cloth, a bundle of reeds, or simply a brick. The purpose was the same, to raise the head slightly. The Egyptians covered themselves with coarse linen or woolen blankets. Nights in the desert can be quite cool, especially in winter. Therefore, a warm blanket was a necessity. The daily life of ordinary Egyptians was focused on survival and practicality. They did not have the means for luxurious beds and expensive amulets. Their protection from nighttime dangers was simpler and based on folk beliefs. Despite the difference in their financial situations, the basic ideas about sleep were common to all. Both the poor and the pharaoh believed that their souls left their bodies at night. They just had different means of protection. How comfortable do you think such sleep was? In the next chapter, you will learn about ancient Egyptian sheets and blankets. Flax was the main textile crop in ancient Egypt, and it was used to make most of the bedding. The Egyptians achieved incredible skill in processing flax. They produced fabrics of varying density and fineness. Sheets for the nobility were made from so-called royal linen. This fabric was incredibly thin, almost transparent, and snow white. It was very soft and pleasant to the touch. Coarser linen fabrics were intended for ordinary people. They were not as white and soft, but very strong and durable. Such bed linen served for years. As already mentioned, mattresses were stuffed with various materials. For the rich, it was down or cotton. The poor used more affordable fillers, straw, dry grass, or even wool production waste. Mattress covers were also sewn from linen. They were removable, which allowed them to be washed and kept hygienic. Cleanliness and neatness were highly valued in Egyptian culture. Blankets were necessary for cool nights. They were made of thicker linen or wool. Wool blankets were warmer, but were considered ritually unclean, so they were rarely used in burials. Bed linen was often decorated with embroidery. These could be geometric patterns or symbolic images. The names of the owner or protective hieroglyphs. The color of bedding was mainly white. The color white was associated with purity, light, and divinity. Sometimes fabrics were dyed other colors using natural dyes. Caring for bedding was the responsibility of women. They washed it in the waters of the Nile, using soda and clay as detergent. The linen was then beaten with wooden rollers and dried in the sun, which gave it extra whiteness.
Another one finished.
They are perfect. Into the basket with the others.
Thus, even in something as utilitarian as bedding, the social stratification of Egyptian society was evident. From the finest royal linen to coarse mats, the sleeping place accurately reflected the status of its owner. What if I told you that the main threat to sleeping Egyptians was not demons, but very real creatures? Egypt's climate and proximity to the Nile created ideal conditions for the reproduction of many insects. Mosquitoes, flies, and other pests were a real scourge, especially at night. To protect themselves from them, the Egyptians came up with one of the most useful inventions in history, the mosquito net. Herodotus, a Greek historian who visited Egypt, described this practice with surprise. He wrote that fishermen used their fishing nets to shelter from mosquitoes at night. Wealthy Egyptians could afford special canopies made of thin linen fabric. These canopies surrounded the bed on all sides, creating an insurmountable barrier for insects.
The linen canopy was essential for the elite. protecting
These
them
nets
from
not only
insects
protected
and
against
drafts.
bites, but also created a feeling of comfort and privacy. They turned the bed into a kind of room within a room. This was especially important for homes where several people lived in one large room. Ordinary people who could not afford fabric canopies looked for other ways to protect themselves. One of them was to smear the body with special oils with a pungent odor. Another danger was scorpions and snakes, which could crawl into the house in search of coolness. That is why beds and sleeping platforms were made to be raised above the floor. The floors in houses were regularly swept and checked before bedtime. Particular attention was paid to dark corners and storage areas where uninvited guests could hide. This was a daily routine necessary for safety. Magical means were used to protect against scorpions. Images of the goddess Selket, the ruler of scorpions, were painted on the walls. It was believed that she would protect the house and its inhabitants from poisonous bites. Thus, the struggle for peaceful sleep was fought on two fronts, practical and magical. Mosquito nets protected against mosquitoes, and spells protected against evil spirits. Both were equally important to the ancient Egyptians. What other dangers do you think awaited sleepers? In the next chapter, we will take a look inside an ancient Egyptian home. The homes of ordinary Egyptians were small and functional. They usually consisted of 2 or 3 rooms. There was often no separate bedroom as such, and the main living area was used for sleeping. The family slept together in one room. This was due not only to a lack of space, but also to considerations of safety and warmth on cool nights. Personal space was a concept foreign to most of the population. There was often an open courtyard in the center of the house. This is where food was prepared, crafts were made, and on hot nights people slept. The courtyard provided ventilation and more space than the cramped rooms. The homes of the nobility were arranged quite differently. They were large villas with many rooms, a garden, and a swimming pool. Here there was a clear division between public and private areas. The owner of the house and his wife had separate bedrooms. These rooms were located in the farthest and most protected part of the house. The master's bedroom, or nobleman's bedroom, was his private quarters. It contained his best bed and chest with clothes and personal belongings. The walls could be decorated with paintings depicting everyday life or mythological scenes. Bathrooms and toilets were often located next to the owner's bedrooms. These were small rooms with stone basins for washing and special seats over vessels filled with sand. Hygiene played an important role in the life of the Egyptian elite. The windows in Egyptian houses were small and located high under the ceiling. This was done to protect the rooms from the scorching sun and sand. There was little furniture in the bedrooms besides the bed. Usually there were low tables, stools, and chests for storing things. The Egyptians did not have wardrobes as we understand them. The bedroom decor reflected the Egyptians' desire for order and harmony. Each item had its place and purpose. It was not just a place to sleep, but a personal space. There was no special clothing for sleeping, such as pajamas in ancient Egypt. People slept either naked or in the same clothes they wore during the day. It depended on the weather and social status. During the hot season, most people preferred to sleep without clothes. It was more comfortable in the stuffy climate. Linen sheets and open roofs helped to cope. The main clothing for both men and women was a simple loincloth or a short linen tunic. Such simple clothing was suitable for both work and rest. Therefore, people often went to bed in it. Wealthy Egyptians could afford finer and softer linen tunics. They were loose-fitting and did not restrict movement during sleep. Sometimes such nightwear was decorated with fine embroidery. During sleep, Egyptians removed most of their jewelry. Heavy necklaces, bracelets, and rings could get in the way. Only small amulets, which were worn constantly for protection, remained. Wigs, which were an integral part of the nobility's wardrobe, were always removed at night. They were carefully placed on special stands to preserve their shape. Sleeping in a wig would have been hot and uncomfortable. Egyptians often braided their own hair into plaits. This was a practical hairstyle that did not interfere with sleep. Both men and women wore fairly long hair. The cosmetics that the Egyptians applied liberally during the day were washed off at night. This was especially true for black eyeliner. However, they did not completely get rid of it as they believed in its protective properties. Thus, preparation for sleep included a number of hygiene procedures. It was necessary to wash, remove excess clothing and jewelry, and tidy up one's hair. This was a daily ritual marking the transition from daytime cares to nighttime rest. The simplicity of nightwear contrasted with the complexity of daytime attire, especially among the elite. At night, everyone became equal before the world of dreams and its dangers. The main thing was not what was on the body, but what protected the soul. For the Egyptians, dreams were not just a figment of the imagination. They were considered messages from the world of the gods. Dreams could predict the future, warn of dangers, or give advice. There were entire books dedicated to interpreting night visions. One such papyrus, known as the Chester Beatty Papyrus, is kept in the British Museum. The interpretation depended on whether the dream was good or bad. A good dream sent by the gods portended good luck.
But this
A
dream,
bad dream was
crocodile
considered the
near
work of
water
evil
jar.
spirits.
This dream is clearly a message from the gods, a sign of great fortune.
Crocodiles signify apep.
For example, seeing yourself drinking beer in a dream was considered a good sign, but seeing your own face in the mirror was bad, as it foreshadowed a new wife. Interpretations were very diverse and sometimes unexpected. Special priests were responsible for interpreting dreams. Both pharaohs and ordinary people turned to them for advice. The priest could not only explain the meaning of the dream, but also perform a ritual to ward off bad
The message
omens.
of the gods is clear. Your dream foretells not sickness, but a long...
Some temples were centers of so-called dream incubation. People came there to spend the night in a sacred place. They hoped that the gods would send them an answer to a pressing question or healing from illness in their dreams. To see a prophetic dream, certain rituals had to be observed. A person had to be ritually pure and abstain from certain foods. Before going to sleep, they recited special prayers and incantations. The belief in the power of dreams was so great that dreams could influence state decisions. There is a well-known story about Thutmose IV, who, while still a prince, fell asleep in the shadow of the Great Sphinx. In his dream, a god appeared to him and promised to make him pharaoh if he cleared the Sphinx of sand. This episode was immortalized on a stele erected between the paws of the Sphinx. It shows the enormous importance attached to dreams in Egyptian culture. Dreams were a direct channel of communication with the divine world.
Directly to him in a dream. This proves his
Thus,
divine
night
right.
was not only a time of rest, but also a time of revelation. The Egyptians listened carefully to their dreams, seeking in them the keys to their future.
The day is done. May the gods grant us safe passage through the night.
Studying the daily life of ancient Egypt allows us to understand how different their views of the world were.
May you rise again
Sleep,
tomorrow.
which we take for granted,
Grant me
was a
peaceful
complex and
passage
meaningful
through the
process for
darkness
them.
until then.
The beds from Tutankhamun's tomb are not just furniture, but the quintessence of Egyptian civilization. Their design reflects both the highest craftsmanship and complex theological concepts. The headrest is perhaps the most striking symbol of this worldview. It simultaneously solved the problem of heat and preserved hairstyles and served as a powerful amulet. This item shows that for the Egyptians, there was no division between the sacred and the profane. The contrast between the sleeping places of the rich and the poor reflects the social structure of society. But even in the simplest mat on the earthen floor, we see echoes of common beliefs. Every Egyptian, falling asleep, embarked on the same journey through Duat. Many of their inventions were surprisingly practical. The use of mosquito nets was a brilliant solution that saved countless lives. It is still relevant today in regions with hot climates. Their attention to hygiene also deserves respect. The desire to keep beds clean and the use of removable mattress covers all speak to a high level of domestic culture. They understood the importance of cleanliness for health. The belief in prophetic dreams and their interpretation connects the Egyptians with many other ancient cultures. It is a universal human desire to look into the future, to find answers in the mysterious world of night visions. Egyptian sleep culture shows us an alternative view of familiar things. It reminds us that comfort is a relative concept. What seems uncomfortable to us was a guarantee of safety and harmony with the world of the gods for them. By studying how the ancient Egyptians slept, we not only learn about their furniture and habits, we immerse ourselves in their worldview and learn to see the world through their eyes. And we understand that even in their sleep, they remained faithful to their gods and traditions. Ultimately, their bedroom was a microcosm reflecting their entire universe. Here, practicality met magic, and everyday life met eternity. And at the center of this world was a person seeking protection and peace. We have taken a journey into the night world of ancient Egypt and seen how different it was from ours. From the luxurious gilded beds of the pharaohs to the simple mats on the roofs of peasant houses, from stone amulet headrests to the first mosquito nets in history, every detail had its own meaning. Sleep was not just rest, but a ritual that required preparation. This proves once again how profound and multifaceted the civilization of the Nile Valley was. They created a unique culture in which even the most mundane things were imbued with deep meaning. Studying their way of life allows us to better understand not only them, but also ourselves. Please suggest topics for future videos that you would like to see on our channel in the comments. Which civilization or era interests you the most? And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on new research into the mysteries of the past.